which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't think we're as popular as the previous meeting.
Yeah, they had a bunch of folks in for that, yeah. Okay, we're going to move on with the roll call.
President Roger Florkowitz.
Here.
Vice President Tim Arvanitis.
Here.
Secretary Paul Petrie.
Here.
David Tarosi.
Here.
Tom Falk, absent. Fire Chief Robert Patterson.
Here.
Deputy Fire Chief David Meyer.
Here.
Recording Secretary Jen Chattel. Here.
Okay, moving on to approval of the minutes from last meeting. Do I
Make a
hear
motion to approve minutes from the February meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, unanimous. Moving on to correspondence. Anything from the department?
No correspondence.
I did receive a email from the chief requesting a additional spot be approved for hiring of a new person off of our hiring list. So that we will be discussing when we get to the new business portion of the meeting. Okay, moving on to old business. Can we get an update on continuation of the review of the merit board rules?
Sure. So at the last meeting, we only had a couple of gaps to fill, one of which was the passing percentages for our testing, and this will sort of segue into what's under new business for the pension board hiring recommendations. I don't have any further changes because we're still waiting for some data on the merit board rules, but I think it's probably best if I discuss in more detail when we get to the pension board hiring recommendations, because that's directly pertinent to those passing percentages and some of the other things that we might want to bake into the rules.
Okay. All right, any other requests for information or anything related to continued review? All right, we'll be moving on. Finishing up B of the old business, update on the firefighter EMT new hires. Chief.
Yes, the candidate Donald is in the process of being hired, and his first date will actually be Monday, March 9th, correct? March 9th will be his first day on duty. And then we'll be having a swearing-in ceremony on April 7th. That's all I have.
An invitation will be sent to you guys once we get closer.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then that would be the second hire that has been already approved by the review board?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the firefighter Toledo personnel update.
Yes, at our pension board, we had a pension board hearing on February 24th for Mr. Polito for his disability hearing. The board made a recommendation to move forward with his disability. So Attorney Coos is working on his paperwork to send down to state for his disability enrollment. And then also today, Mr. Enrique came in and put in his letter of resignation starting today's date. So with that, that's going to leave another opening on our hiring list, and that's where I'm sent the letter and requesting permission to move forward with hiring to fill that position also.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, moving on to new business. Pension board hiring recommendations.
Chief, did you distribute those already, or do you have that information for the board?
I have it here, so if I could, I'll pass it out. And then obviously this is going to be something for you to review, not really to be decided today. You haven't seen it?
So as you get that, I'll just kind of run down what we got. The pension board has been, obviously they're involved in the process of bringing in new hires, and because even though they come in sort of a little bit later in the process, but they did have a meeting, an annual meeting recently. We received a correspondence from them on February 13th with some recommendations concerning the treatment of the hiring list. They made, in particular, two recommendations with regard to the hiring list that I'll just read them off here in full because they're pretty short. If the Schererville Fire Department must pass a candidate due to a certification issue, that candidate shall be moved to the bottom of the list one time. A second failure to meet the certification requirements shall result in removal from the hiring list. That was the first recommendation. The second recommendation was if the Schererville Fire Department must pass a candidate due to not passing a requirement of the 1977 Police Officers and Firefighters Retirement Fund, then that candidate shall be removed from the hiring list. I've looked at both of those recommendations from a legal standpoint, and we'll give you till next month to kind of chew on this, but I'll take the second one first, that being if the fire department must pass on a candidate due to not passing a requirement of the pension fund, that they be removed from the hiring list. I'm not sure that we need to, we could reiterate that in the rules if we wanted to, but based on my reading of the rules, I think that's a given. The statute clearly states that once the candidates are on the certified list and the chief has requested to fill a spot, that the next step is they still be of good moral character and they pass the pension board requirements for both the physical and the psychological examination. If they don't pass those requirements, they can't be brought onto the department. My impression is that's how the system works already. I can reiterate that in the rules if the board would like it to be more clear. But I don't think that it's absolutely necessary because I think it's already implicit in the statute.
My question is that if they were to make it to the list, wouldn't that have already been checked to get to the list? That's what I feel like we got the cart before the horse here.
Not necessarily, because the way the process under the statute works is they make it to the list by virtue of the interviews, basically, and they take a they do take a physical aptitude test. But after they have been included on the list, so they've passed the whole interview process, we've certified the list, we know what their ranking is, that's how they make the list. Only at the point when we actually do the final hiring are they subjected to the pension board testing and the pension board requirements. And I think part of that is simply because they could be on that list and then something could happen and then maybe they can't pass the medical anymore, or maybe they have something traumatic that they encounter where they would no longer pass the psychological examination. The other part of it is there is some cost involved in that testing process, so we don't want to expend that money and put that out there.
I guess then what isn't clear to me is I'd have to see what the requirements of that. I didn't realize that the 77, retirement fund law, I don't know what those specifics are. And it seems like we've covered some of those in our pre-qualifications for that. So that's why I guess, not knowing specifically what's there, I'd like to know more about what specifically those requirements are so we can compare that as opposed to just saying, yeah, that maybe we have to do it later. I still believe, because I'm not an expert in that, but I'm very familiar with that because my dad was part of that, the timing of that. And I think that the requirements of that are not just around physical aptitude and things like that. There are some things about length of service, previous employment with the town, and different things like that, so.
Chief, do you want to talk to, I know we had a brief discussion about the psychological exam, for example, but I know that's only part of bringing people into the pension system. I think you're a lot more familiar with what the guys go through in the process. Maybe you can answer some of those questions.
Right, so obviously we do the online evaluation testing and all that, and then the interviews, and that's where we get the list put together. So from that list, once we get the list approved, that's when we start selecting. Once we get the approval to move on through the hiring process, that's when we take the first candidate on the list, send them in to get the evaluations done. So the evaluation starts out with a psychological test, and then they're sent for the physical test. And the physical test is all kinds of work, including blood, hearing, everything that you can think of that needs to be done to make sure that they're physically capable of doing this job. So that's where that process is. And then from that point, once they're cleared by that paperwork's sent to the state to get their approval from the PERF. And then once it's approved from them, then it goes in front of the PERF board for their final approval.
Okay, so it's only basically those two items then, is the psychological and physical testing then?
After everything else, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the second recommendation from the pension board was that, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely clear on what they mean by if the Schererville Fire Department must pass a candidate due to a certification issue. I presume maybe that means.
I can elaborate on that. So
Yeah.
it's basically if a candidate applied, because at the time of job offer, you have to have all those qualifications. So at the time of hiring, if you don't have your EMT license, your paramedic license, your firefighter at the time, then that's what would disqualify you, move you down the list.
Okay. So
So
instead
that
of,
if-
it
say
allows
somebody
us to, instead of having to start from scratch with another candidate, they can still be vetted and then gives them some time to get things back in
So if in
compliance
that
with the state
process,
and
after they
things.
were passed, they get moved to the bottom of the list,
Okay.
if in that time period when we get to them, they may have accomplished that and got that certification that
Right.
they're requiring.
Okay.
What did you do before? Just removed?
Yes, if they didn't have anything.
Okay.
So from a legal standpoint, I reviewed the statute on this particular issue, and I can tell you there's nothing in the statute that grants us the ability to move things around on the list. The way the statute reads is that the applicants on the list will be ranked by their scores from highest to lowest, and then when we select the next incoming candidate, we pick the top scoring applicant. Now, obviously, I think if they don't have a certification that was a prerequisite of the job, that would not make them eligible to be the next candidate on there. I also didn't see anything in the statute that specified whether we are to remove them from the list or whether we can just, pass down the list if they don't meet the requirements at the time of the potential hire. So there might be some ambiguity to that. I'm a little bit hesitant, though, to propose to you guys that we should write into the rules that we move them to the bottom of the list, because I think that could
I
set
think
off.
that violates the entire rank ordering aspect of it.
Right.
And that was my concern, is that if we pass them beyond that, why not skip them 1 or 2 or 3 or wait till next time? It's very arbitrary at this point, so I think we need to dig into that a little bit, because,
And that's why we're bringing this for review. And obviously, the question would be, because what if you go to the next person, you're constantly going back to that person, but they haven't got it, and then you're just constantly going to that person.
Right.
So that's why we are looking at bringing them to the bottom list, gives them time to get those certifications. And that could also mean not just EMT or paramedic license, but that could also mean the CPAP, which is a physical agility test.
Yeah, I guess, my only thoughts at this time is that moving them to the bottom gives them more time to get that up to date, but in the case like we just had where we've created an opening, and it's, as we have dealt with in the past 6 months, it's a certification, things are complete, there's paperwork to be verified by the state. Moving them to the bottom list doesn't seem fair at that time either, because by the time that next position would come up, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, and they've now got that paperwork done, that means we have to go through 4 other candidates that actually ranked lower than the person that was above. There's a jackpot of things that I think we can get ourselves into trouble with.
Yeah, that would be my concern exactly. And what if, I know we've had a lot of openings lately, but what if you construct this list and the list is only good for 2 years? What if you don't have any openings during that time and you just kick somebody from the top to the bottom? Another position doesn't come up.
Right, for much longer than that 2-year period.
So
Yeah, but if you do that, then you're gonna have to remove the second failure, because the second failure might be 2 weeks later. Right? It says the second failure means they're bumped completely. And if you're not giving the guy time the allotted time to get the certification, he could get bumped right off the bat.
Again, it's
neither
all
one's-
timing,
neither one's a
either
winner,
timing
right?
related.
I
It-
understand.
Yeah.
It is not clear and
Yeah.
not clean, so.
Could you consider a specific time frame? Like would be reconsidered in 90 days or whatever?
I guess for me, the big issue is the statute, from my reading of it, was the rank ordering list based on testing scores. Any positioning that we do there, I'm not sure that we have legal grounds to move and adjust that scoring. And even if we said, oh, well, if we're gonna give 2 weeks or a month, we've kind of addressed that in our previous meetings by allowing people, in order to maintain this point once they're on the department, we're giving them a month, we're giving them 6 weeks to complete that. If there seems to be a position and it's open and they don't qualify on that date, I think at that point is when the candidate then addresses, and maybe we have the chief make a recommendation at that point. We take a deep breath and decide, is it a 2-week issue? Is that really what's gonna happen? For me, that seems to be really the only way from a legal standpoint, because we stay on the point where we're delaying that. And if it's only 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, then we decide at that time, if it seems reasonable, that they will meet that requirement in that time period. If they do, then we are good to go, because we've maintained that rank ordered position on the list as required by statute.
So you're basically saying delay the hire for
Delay
a
the
little
hire
bit.
for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
a month, and, maybe that's where we put a time limit. If it's going to be less than X, then we're able to do that, because I think that allows us to do this. But at the same time, if the candidate, then the personal side of things for me says, well, if the candidate wasn't ready and they applied for this job, then they should have stayed ready. So there's a certain amount of, be careful what you wish for, and if you get that phone call about having a job, if you're not ready, well, next time be prepared. So, again, I just think that if we have gone through the point, they've got on the list, we've expended that money, if we can use that, list and get some benefit from that, then by all means, I think we should, but I think moving them to the bottom is where we really have, that gives them the most chance, but why not just move them to the next position? Because to your point, it may be 6 months before that next position comes up, and they'd be fine to get it, rather than having to wait for, 3 or 4 or 5 or 7 more people to go, so.
I don't disagree with you, because it's logical and it makes sense, but it's not, I don't believe it's practical. I think what they wrote is the clear-cut, practical way to go, not that it's the right way to go.
Well, that's the thing, I don't think that's legal, that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the, I don't mind their approach. It's just, when I saw it, I'm looking at the statute thinking,
Right.
how do we make that
It's no
work?
longer rank ordered, I think that kicks it out, now we've exposed us to all kinds
So
of different
regardless of
things.
what we come up with.
We are kind of in between a rock and a hard spot here, and that's why I think the only way to maintain that list, if we truly want to maintain that candidate, we have to keep them in that position at that point. And if they find out that they have not gotten paramedic certification or they had their license revoked for some reason, and it's going to take a lot longer than 2 years to get that back because they have to do retraining and things like that. We'll know specifically with that candidate at that time, but then we're dealing with a specific set of facts based on the timing that we have, and then can decide at that time, does it make sense to, maybe it is only Monday morning, we have to call down to Indianapolis and verify that things are right. That's one thing. Finding out that the guy's on probation has to go and, complete practicals and evaluations and things that's gonna take 6 months or a year. So that's why, that's my concern with the first one. The second one, I think that, we've kind of addressed that already, but.
So considering we have, we're gonna have basically have two more openings, this very well could happen. So the way that you're painting it is that if the next candidate that they select on the list is not, doesn't qualify.
Certification issue,
So
right?
you're saying for them to come back to us and then we decide on delaying things a little bit before moving on to the next
I
candidate?
think that's the only thing, we can either pass on them, as they're doing now, which is the process, or if we want to maintain that list structure, which is where I think our legal requirement is. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that the meeting, I think that we've got one that can comment, but I think that leaves us in a position where we can either maintain the list as it is with a slight delay in hiring, or we have to pass. I don't think that we have a mechanism in place without some law to reorder the list, otherwise.
I agree, yeah, I agree. I mean, the most clear-cut way of doing it would be to, if you just wanted to follow the letter of the law, would be to look at it and say, well, if they're not qualified right now, they're not qualified, we have to move on. When we hire them, they are qualified. It's,
And one other thing that I do like about this is that this does give the discretion to the department, knowing what positions are available, when things are there. You already know what the list is. There can be, some background checks and things and conversations held with potential candidates that gives you the ability to give a heads up to a potential candidate that there may be an opening coming up. And then at that time, you have the choice, we don't even need to meet to delay, is that you find out that the next candidate is available. We don't need to approve you reaching out to candidates on the list to see if they're still interested and qualified. And then if they're not qualified at that time, the guy said, oh, I just finished my retesting, but it'll be 2 weeks before you know. Then you say, okay, in 2 weeks, I'm going to send the letter and request an opening and a review for an open position. So I think that's the other mechanism. It gives you a little bit more control to be able to look at that up front before we get hamstrung and are locked into a specific, position. You just delay the request. We don't even have to be aware of it until the time for that, comes up.
So you're advising that if the next candidate I call advises they don't have their certifications or qualifications,
And it gives you the discretion to say, well, how long do you think it's going to take? And you can table it yourselves and determine what you have for, again, if it's a weekend, 2 weeks, if they say 6 months or whatever, again, that's up to you. But I think it leaves it on you to be able to make the best choices based on the list that you have, the people that you have, and the way the department goes. You can then control when you ask for that position to be filled, if that makes sense. Then we're not delaying, we don't have to force a person out based on, here's the position available.
no, but it's delaying me to hire. So that's what I'm getting at is if they don't have it now, they need to be passed and moved on to the next person. And then when another position opens, basically what the law is saying is that I have to go back to that top person that we passed,
Right, but there-
re-offer it again, and if they still don't pass it, I move on to the next person. And then if another opening comes, then I go back to that top person again. And if he still doesn't have it, I have to keep going down the list, because if I keep
Right.
waiting, it could be forever.
I understand. Now, I guess the thing I want to clarify is, I don't believe that you're statutorily required, though, as of the date of a resignation, to have to request that position to be filled. That's what I'm saying. It gives you that latitude. You're not forced into making that decision that day. It can be next Monday, it could be a week, and that gives you just a little bit of time to sort out, to decide, do you automatically want to pass on that and and give up the cost of the training and the rank ordering and the things that went into doing that? Or would it be better to maintain a little discretion? If I were you, I would want that decision to say, I've got to have to wait for a week and fill with some overtime and different things because this guy says he's going to be cleared in a week or 2 days, or, you know, I just have to check. Because I don't think that you're required to have that position. The position opens, I don't think there's a statutory requirement for the chief to have to fill that position within a certain notice of.
So my letter is when I call, you are to have your certifications on when I call to give you my conditional offer of employment.
Right.
That is part of the requirement. So
Right,
at
but
that
you don't
time,
need to have, you don't have to, you can contact them without an official offer to verify that their application status is still active and that they're still interested in the position, right? There's nothing prohibiting you from doing that.
no, and if I do, obviously if I'm calling them to offer them that job. So that's at the point when I call and offer them the conditional, I got to make sure they have all that requirements, and if they say no, then I have to tell them that I'm moving on to the next client, and then you're going to be held at that list at that point. Because the way you're saying is I have to keep going back to that person after every
Well,
time.
I don't think the statute's clear on it. I think basically what he's trying to say is, you know there's a potential opening that might be coming up in 6 months or so. I don't know, maybe somebody's retiring or something. And,
We have the
you
established
reach out to the
list.
people on the list and say, hey, you guys submitted applications, you're on our hiring list. Just so you know, you
See if
need,
they're available and
we may
still
be hiring.
wanting to be on the
Right.
list.
It
Yeah,
stays
we may
informal
be
at that
hiring
point.
soon.
Right.
And if you want to be eligible, you need to make sure that your certifications are all up to date when that opportunity comes.
Absolutely, yeah, no, that's exactly what we've done in the past too, because we need to know if we need to start a whole new list, so we're not wasting time.
Right, right.
Yeah, I absolutely
That-
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I was
All right,
saying, yeah.
I was
Okay.
making sure, because like, we're in a situation now where I got, technically 3 openings, so I need to keep moving on this list, and I can't keep.
Right, keep
am I
going
to
back
keep-
and
Am I
back,
gonna
right.
keep going back
It's a
to this
perpetual
person
delay
every
at that
time?
point, right.
So,
And, it may be a good idea if, after we get our certified list that's sent to the safety board, maybe just telling everyone on the list at that time, you've been included on the hiring list, and.
Which is valid for 2 years.
Yeah, which is
so-
valid for 2 years. Please ensure that you maintain all necessary qualifications if you wish to remain an eligible
Right,
candidate.
that's what I said,
on-
kind of be proactive to go
Yeah.
through, and then your hands are not tied, you're not locked in, but it gives you a little bit of discretion to say, yeah, hey, would you like to have that informal, cup of coffee and find out how you're doing with, are you still interested in working in Schererville without having to make an official offer? And be clear, I'm just checking to see if you're still interested in being part of this department.
right, to see where our list stands.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that would require a change to any of our rules.
Right, that's what I was kind of saying, and I think it keeps us in a good legal position, because nobody can come back later and say, I was passed over, or I was removed
Yeah.
for,
You're not offering a job, you're not making any representations, you're just saying, so you understand if we do have a position that
Right.
comes up and you're on this list, you need to be ready when we
right,
get
are
there.
you able to certify that you still meet those requirements? Right.
Great idea, great plan.
Okay, any other questions?
You're just being proactive.
All right. Okay, moving on to
The new hire.
new hire, yes. We have been informed that there is an opening for a new firefighter paramedic, or firefighter EMT.
Right.
What is the position it is?
It obviously is for paramedic, but
Okay.
if you, you'll have to obtain your license in the time frame. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the fire department is asking for approval to move on to the hiring list to approve another new hire position to replace the recent resignation. Do I hear any motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor of approving a new hire?
Aye.
Motion carries, unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have any other reports?
No reports.
Anything from the board members, besides ensuring that we have one firefighter per 1,000 residents in Schererville?
Just let's have that on record, please. No, I just had a question for you, Chief. I probably caught you off guard. Do you know how many training hours you had in 2025? Yes.
We do have it written down. I don't have,
It was over 700, I believe.
yeah.
Oh, that's excellent.
Training
Yeah.
officer submits a year-end report every year to the town, and yeah, offhand, I believe it was over 711 hours.
That's for the month. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
700 hours of training was for the month of February.
February.
Okay.
I was thinking of the wrong number. My apologies.
See if we can find the report.
As you're looking for that, Chief, Dave, maybe you can answer the question for me, just to clear up, and I don't want to rehash this whole conversation that we just had, but when you do pass over somebody currently, the way that we do things, when you do pass over somebody, you do go back each time?
Right now,
That's how it works?
we have I think number 2 on our list. Didn't have his EMT. He was in EMT school. He wasn't done with the class yet, so he was able to be on the list. And then when we went, and Chief offered him the job, he still didn't receive his EMT license, so that's why we went to the number 3 person. So he's still on the list.
Okay.
So we don't know what his status is, because now we have 2 more openings. So if we go back to him, he's like, no, I still don't have it, and we'll move down to the next guy on the list, the next eligible person on the list.
And he stays on that list for the 2 years?
Right now, yes, it's still right there.
Okay, just curious, thanks.
I'll
Maintaining
look
the
into
rank ordering, though.
that list shuffling a little bit more and see if there's some guidance from other departments, because the statute doesn't offer any clarity on that. And then I know we went to the new hire, but there was some further information that was proposed by the pension board concerning our point scoring for the evaluations, how we bring people on. And that'll, we'll give you guys a chance to chew on that, but they recommended a couple of things. One was, I think now the passing score on the written exam is 70%. They recommended a minimum score of 75%. I'm not sure how they figured that would make much of a difference. Maybe they had their reasons. But they did recommend upping that a little bit, which is entirely within your discretion. And then they also offered a recommendation to include certain preference point categories for new hires. Those being a preference for anyone already possessing their paramedics license at the time they engage in their hiring interviews, a preference for honorably discharged veterans, and a preference if the individual was a lateral transfer from another department, because at that point we would already know that you know, they meet the requirements for the pension board and whatnot. The way they have proposed the points, they didn't get too specific, because I'm not sure how familiar they are with the merit board statute. But based on my read of the merit board statute, I think one or maybe all of these items might be things that we could consider in the hiring process. I do think that those preference points would probably be most appropriately included in the oral, the second phase of the hiring interviews. The first phase of the hiring interviews is supposed to be the general aptitude test. So that would be the written and the video interviews. That is based on the standards required to be a firefighter. And I don't see a whole lot of leeway in that for sort of preference considerations. However, after they move through that general aptitude test, the statute provides that they will subsequently be rated on the selection criteria and testing methods adopted by the commission, which may include, and I'll emphasize may include, mental alertness, character, habits, reputation, and so on. I think that's the portion where we've got a little bit more leeway to consider these. So if the board is, if you like this preference recommendation, then what I would do is I would go back and I would try to find a way to include those preferences in the oral interview component of our hiring process that allows for some of those more intangibles. We could try to bake it into the scoring sheet that we use for the oral interviews.
Yeah, I agree that would be the correct position, I think, to put it in. It's just a matter of, we've defined that points amount category in the way it was broken down, so this, just adding 5 points, you know, these, we'd have to figure out a way to scale that appropriately and get that to massage in
Yeah.
into that whole.
And we were already, you know, at the last meeting, we discussed a little bit about reviewing the points, the way they were actually calculated, so that we could actually pin down like a passing score on that oral interview portion. And we'll get some data from Chief and the department. I think once we have that and we can see how it was formulated, we can figure out how any of these preference items might figure into that scoring. and
Figure
what
out
an
what the
appropriate-
allocation ends up
Yeah.
being to make it appropriate, okay.
Yep.
I guess that was one question I had, this list, and were you guys aware and understood the debate that went on with these type of items? Were you previously aware of that?
As far as,
Like the scoring and adding the categories and things?
right, well, yeah, there was always a scoring for the hiring process.
Right, but I'm saying as far as, you know, picking a paramedic, you know, that's something that I think is valued, but you guys were aware of that, and the veteran and the lateral transfer, you're in support of trying to do that type of thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this would help a lot in this process. I know Dave had some questions and thoughts and concerns in that. So that's why we had the pension board actually sat down, went through this kind of stuff, put this together just so you had something to kind of, what they
Okay.
kind of were feeling. And I agree with it. I sat down with them and I liked what I seen, so I'm
Okay.
very happy with what they put together.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
And I think it's going to benefit us in the future to help have a solid list.
Right, and I think that just based on that, you know, that makes me feel better that you're understanding that. It's just a matter, we have to figure out, is it 5 points, 3 points, 1 point? What's the scoring that makes
Right.
it work?
Right.
So that we're not watering down the rest of those categories.
Right, and that's
Okay.
why we wanted to bring this to you. This is for discussion, and this is for you guys to look, put in some information that you think is gonna be beneficial, and then we can try to get this to Christian and get this nailed and put down. Make it solid.
Okay.
And also, I did find out the training hours.
Oh, please,
So
I've been
for-
waiting.
Yeah, for 2025, we had 8,055.26 hours of total training, so,
That's excellent.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's really
well
good.
done, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. Thank John Gedemans, who is our Assistant Chief of Training, so, great job.
Okay, so to finish up, we're back with this discussion. The next point of the proposed changes goes on to putting a cap of 10 points rather than allowing, you know, as it was written with the 15-point scale, that they'd only allow a maximum of 10. So that would be something we'd also have to look at fitting into that rubric of, you know.
I think that pertains in particular to the preference points.
Right, from
Which
category
kind of goes
2.
into that same discussion, yeah.
Right, so
Before
of the
we-
15 points under preference point categories, then item 3 talks about capping it at 10.
Yeah.
So if they met all 3, they'd still only be able to get 10 points. So
Right.
again, that just a little more complicated of how to bake it into the oral portion of that. But keeping that in mind, we'd have to make sure how we fit that in to allow that. and then a list of the benefits that are going in. And I believe that, I guess the one question I do have, going back to the first point, was that the minimum score is 75% from 70. I don't want to call that arbitrary, but it seems just, picking another number, now it's instead of a C, it's a C plus, or, what would that do to our current list had we adjusted that? Would that have affected the candidates that we had seen on the previous, just as a kind of a litmus test? Would there be any that were excluded from the written and video?
That would have drastically knocked down our list to 5 candidates
Wait,
instead of 15.
If we moving, if
If
by
the total
moving it to
score,
75%.
if you're saying it's 75. Well, actually,
so you're saying
this is the
two-thirds?
final- I'm sorry, this is the final one. Offhand, I wouldn't know because the first
Right,
part is
but
talking about.
from the
online.
finalists, though, that would have taken half out. then.
Two-thirds.
Finalists would have, yes.
Yeah, so,
But,
again, I
but the
think
top
that-
part is actually for the online portion.
That goes
Right.
back to the
To move
comment
them
I
on
made
to the
previously,
next
that
portion.
we should be more inclusive.
Right,
than-
that was my
yeah.
concern, is
Yeah,
that if we go too far in, we're suddenly now, the bad test takers, the people with stage fright when doing some of that can be, unintentionally excluded and has nothing to do with that, so, okay. So that's why I was just trying to understand the background on that, so, okay. All right. Any other comments related to the proposed changes? And we'll move back into our agenda items. Board members, got any other further questions? All right.
Good, thank you.
No business from the floor. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Done. Motion adjourned.
Guys.